Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Pain to Profits. I'm your host, Samson Jagoras, and every single week we bring on entrepreneurs to help you guys save time and level up on your journey so that you can experience less pain and more quickly get to profits. And today I'm actually incredibly excited. I'm fanboying out a little bit over here. I got Nick Huber, aka Sweaty Startup, if you guys know the handle on Twitter, who's literally in less than 24 hours, he put out a post on Twitter and we scheduled a podcast. And today we're going to share his story on how he's gone from pain to profits. We're going to talk more about scaling your Twitter as an asset and building content as an entrepreneur. And we're going to talk more about tactical mindset and strategy on how to go from being an entrepreneur to being an entrepreneur. And then we're going to talk a lot about the companies that he's building now and kind of his vision for the future. And now that he's a Yoda on the entrepreneurial journey, what wisdoms he's thinking about and kind of the next era of entrepreneurship as we go through this $96 trillion wealth transfer as the baby boomers kind of exit. And the next gen guys like me and Nick kind of take over the helm as the thought leaders in entrepreneurship. So without further ado, Nick, welcome to the show, bro. How are you?
Samson, thanks for having me. I think, first of all, I love your mission and we think about this. We think about a lot of things the same way and we have a lot of the same goals. So I think this will be a great conversation. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, 100%. You know, one of the things I appreciate about you the most is this just very simplistic outlook on entrepreneurship, which is doing simple things, common things, as you say, consistently, right, for an unreasonable amount of time, so long that it would be unreasonable for you to not be successful. And I think that you've done a very good job of communicating that message and inspiring a lot of people to just kind of go all in on entrepreneurship. But from what I've gathered, that might not always be the case. I don't know if you were always an entrepreneur, and I'm actually more interested in that personally about who are you and how'd you get to where you are today?
Yeah. I mean, before we went live, you were telling me your story of how you, same, direction, same end goal that I'm in, but the path of working with a company to build divisions and kind of grinding your head against a grindstone inside of a business. And while I started my own, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference there. Like you can, I see a lot of people who do really, really well and get their start without the risk, but the same sort of uncomfort, the same, the grind. I mean, the pain. This is real. Like I'm a glutton for punishment. I think I'll never be comfortable, like ever. It's like if I'm not doing uncomfortable things, then my life is not growing and moving forward. So while the stakes are going up and I'm influencing more and more people and doing more fun things and making more money now, I've always been, since the beginning, uncomfortable and in pain. So here we go.
Were you one of those guys who was, slinging candy bars in middle school? Were you always
I was
an
running a
entrepreneur?
lawn care business. Yeah. So my dad was not an entrepreneur himself. He did run a company for about 5 years before I was born, up until I was about 3 years old, and he ended up shutting it down. Didn't quite work. He was a contractor, framer, builder, working with his hands and running crews. And he's super charismatic, an amazing salesperson. He can convince people to do and be excited about pretty much anything. And he got me excited about small business as a youngster, but it wasn't really in a sexy, incredible, hey, let's watch Shark Tank together and think about business ideas. It was more like, hey, Nick, get out on the mower and while your friends are working for $6.25 an hour at Subway, you can go around and mow lawns and make $35-$40 an hour in 2006, 2005. And
Right.
it just kind of went from there. And I realized pretty quick that, hey, if I can go out and sell a little bit and run my own thing and make $35 an hour as a 14-year-old on a lawnmower, then why would I accept kind of working for a normal wage when I'm in college, trying to make some extra money, or just out of college when you get offered, $50,000 a year to go slave away in corporate America?
Yeah. So right out of college, did you go and start your own company?
Well, the lawn care stuff was when I was 14. I didn't have my driver's license yet, and I actually got some clients that owned some commercial real estate in the town nearby me. So I had to hire a high schooler to drive me around and paid them $15 an hour. So that's when I got the first taste of delegation and how sweet it is when all of a sudden you can hire somebody for $15 an hour and you can get done twice as fast. And my hourly wage went from 35 to about $60 an hour. Like, wow, this is great.
Right.
But no, it went off to college, handed that business off to my little brother, but went off with some cash in the bank and some experience. solving problems and just the uncertainty of entrepreneurship and the fact that you have nobody to really turn to when problems happen. Um, Graduated from college with a side hustle slash small business doing pickup and delivery, moving and storage for students called Storage Squad. 2011 is when we started that. We got pretty serious about it, grew it. By 2014, 15, I graduated in 2012. By 2015, we had $500,000 sitting in the bank and a thriving business, and we were able to invest in a self-storage facility. And we were running a really hard business. Pickup and delivery, student storage. We're in 25 major colleges, 12 states. It all happens at the same time during finals week. When the kids move out, we went from 4 to 6 full-time employees to 150 part-time employees that are driving these trucks around. We had to lease warehouses, get boxes everywhere. Got to the point where we were doing 7,000 students a year, and we were moving, almost 50,000 boxes and items and storing them and moving them back again. So, wow. I learned business in the hardest business that there is. It wasn't scalable. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't fun. And looking back, it was one of the worst businesses that exists. So by 2015, we had some cash aside, and we were like, wow, this self-storage thing over here, we're watching people make way more money than us and have way less stress and way less energy. And frankly, they're not running their businesses very well. So we built a building from the ground up, raised the capital, kind of bit off a lot. And this is where my father influenced me again to kind of go big, gave me the courage to do this as a 25-year-old wide-eyed, kid, basically. We built this facility, went way over budget, solved a bunch of problems, took a $1.8 million bank loan, raised another $500,000 from friends and family. My dad was an investor in that deal, and he didn't really have the money to be an investor. He took a mortgage on our house to do it, didn't tell me at the time. So I'm glad he didn't, because it would have made the whole thing more stressful. We got that building opened in 2017, and the rest is kind of history. Once we got that thing open, the operations of a self-storage facility, we hit our stride, and we got a lot of customers, and we filled that building up, and we filled it up. And 2 years later, it was worth $5.2 million, even though we spent 2.9 all in. And we're like, wow. So you're telling me this little thing over here was 20% of our stress, 10% of our work, and it generated more net worth and more value than all the other things that we've done combined? What are we doing here? And we kind of made a mission to let's buy a couple more storage facilities, use this small business to pour cash into the real estate game. By 2019, we had tapped our own capital was ran out, but we kept finding deals, and we couldn't really raise money. I'm not a country club kid, or had a network of a ton of wealthy people, didn't know how to raise capital. So we kind of bumped against the wall. We're like, damn, we better keep this small business, because we don't have any more access to cash to go fuel the real estate empire. And then I got on Twitter in 2020 and started talking about my deals, talking about how I think about business, and started getting face-to-face via web conference with some investors and raising capital. And my network just began to explode. And 2021, 2022, you've seen what's happened. We've raised $40 million of outside capital, 99% through Twitter. And the network, the people that we've met. It's not like I'm advertising, soliciting investment on Twitter, but just meeting people and investors and people who want to be a part of it. And here we are today with a $150 million self-storage portfolio, and exploring entrepreneurship in some other areas too, with some small business endeavors.
Man, there's so much to unpack there. I mean, I think the very first thing, just for the audience, you generally get into business like 4 ways, right? Born in a family business, spend 7 to 10 years working in an industry, go get your head kicked in a couple times, or find a mentor, or maybe some combination of all of those. So you definitely went through the go get your teeth kicked in. The other thing I've also noticed about entrepreneurs, myself included, you kind of go on this first business and you don't even really know what you're doing. And generally that first business model is garbage. And you don't realize that until you're way too far into the business to kind of pivot. And then the last thing, find a vertical source of income within your business and parlay that into stable cash producing assets. Same kind of strategy that I've deployed as well. And I think if you're an entrepreneur and you maybe have started on a business that isn't super profitable or super ideal, it's the best proving ground, because every entrepreneur who's gone on to do their second business takes everything that they learned about doing that and then parlay it into the next one. And that's where you see the quote unquote overnight success. It's not an overnight success. They just took 6 or 7 years of getting their head kicked in, realize that's not the business that they want to do. And now they have a playbook, right? And so I think, for our audience, kind of the entrepreneur kind of wanting to make that transition over to the entrepreneur, about 90% of that transition is like head trash. There's all these fears built up. You didn't really have that because you started at 14. And, for me, I was playing football. I wasn't even thinking about how to make money. I was figuring out how to go play in college, right? So that was my focus. That was my job. But money was this like really foreign thing to me. So when I finally really started making some, call it 10 years into my career, I'm making like $300,000 a year. I got equity in a company that I helped scale from the ground up. I had so much anxiety about making that transition, right? Of like, man, how am I going to pay my mortgage? What about insurance, benefits, consistency, all these things, right? So what's the mindset shift that we need to make in order to kind of just jump headfirst into the entrepreneurial journey and not be held back by these like ridiculous, which I look back now are so silly. They're things that are just like totally irrelevant.
Yep.
But what's the mindset that you would recommend?
It's people get the cart before the horse. I mean, when you're in small business or entrepreneurship, or you're interested in entrepreneurship, you can look at the media, you can look at, watch Shark Tank, you can look at the people who are down the path. You look at Samson, you look at Nick, you look at what they've built, and you're like, wow, I got to start there. That's what I got to do. That's my goal. And I think goals are the worst thing that could happen to a non-entrepreneur or entrepreneur. Start to set those goals. Everybody's like, oh, set big goals. And if you miss, you're going to land among, shoot for the stars. You'll land among the clouds, or whatever the stupid saying is. That's not really realistic at all. That's not realistic at all. Business is about momentum. You need three things to be really good at business. It's capital, it's a network, and it's skills. Okay. You got to learn how to operate a company. You got to have money, and you got to have the access to the network of people to hire and to get involved and to sell to. Without those things, you're at a tremendous disadvantage. You'll find yourself in a tough business grinding away. But once you get those things built up slowly over time, you can do bigger and bigger and better things. So many people think, oh, how can I go make a $500 million startup? How can I go raise this money? How can I replace my $300,000 income? And that's the wrong way to think about it. Yeah. I got excited about entrepreneurship as a 20-year-old, and our goal was to put a couple $1,000s in our pocket. That was our goal. And if we achieved that goal, then we set another one. But it wasn't, oh, I need a business that can be scalable and can take over the world. I was in an entrepreneurship class in my college, and it's the same, entrepreneurship class that everybody gets in, where you think of a business idea and you spend the semester working on that business idea. All 20 other kids in the class had a business idea of a groundbreaking, world-changing idea, whether it be an app, a new invention, a new product. I'm the one who said, like, hey, I want to start a moving and storage company and pick up college kids' stuff. And I got up there and I gave my presentation, and the professor almost had lost it, like sprung a gasket on me, because he kept asking these questions like, what's your moat? Like, what's your moat? What's going to keep other companies from doing what you do? And I was like, what do you mean a moat? The other company that's making $300,000 a year right here in Ithaca has a freaking clipboard. They're walking around with clipboards. You not understand, like, we don't need to walk around with clipboards. We can take some orders online. Well, okay, how's it scalable? How's it going to be scalable? And they're like, scalable, it's just me. $300,000. I'm talking like, that's way more money than I can go make working at Coca-Cola or for a private equity firm in New York City. And it just didn't click. Everybody's looking at me like I got three heads, because my business is not scalable. It's not risky. It's not groundbreaking. So, there's my spiel on like the mindset to actually get started is just set lower goals. That's not a sexy thing to say. That's not something that this clip is not going to go viral on YouTube. Me telling people to set smaller goals.
No, but it's the same thing that I've come to learn. I mean, I have friends, guys just like you doing $45 million a year, and you would never know that they're this crazy, super successful entrepreneur. And they started out with like, one guy in a truck, pouring concrete on the weekends, right? Like, they just figured out a gap in the market. And what are most contractors not great at? They're not good at like picking up their phone, responding to bids, showing up on time, having maybe a more technical process. I think we overcomplicate what it means to revolutionize a market, right? Everybody wants to think about pioneering, and a lot of people died trying to pioneer, the United States. It's not a
there's people dying right now in the bottom of the ocean trying to explore the Titanic.
Right. Exactly right.
Too many entrepreneurs are like, hey, entrepreneurs are like, that's Mount Everest. I got to climb Mount Everest. I got to do this. Yep. I got to do this absurdly difficult thing. I got to try this thing that nobody's ever done before.
Yeah. And I think that's what I appreciate about you the most is, for the longest time, most entrepreneurships are the guys showing up on the cover of Forbes magazine, Entrepreneur. They're in the news. They're, building spaceships and doing crazy crap like that. And so it's given this, I don't know, disproportionate value on being a revolutionary, being a Bill Gates or an Elon Musk. But truth be told, 70% of the economy is just small business owners. They're people making, $1 to $2 million a year top line revenue, maybe taking home $120,000 a year, living a great life, having a great business. You don't have to go do Elon Musk things in order to have a successful business. And that's a big part of what we're trying to encourage people to do. Is most entrepreneurs are really just chasing time freedom. Like, I just want control over my time. I want control over my money, and I want to control over the relationships that I have, and I want more purpose. I want to be more involved with my church or my community. Or
You want to hear the sad part?
Yep.
Entrepreneurs get into entrepreneurship because they want time freedom, but most of the time they end up with less time and less flexibility than people with jobs, because they don't understand that if you work in your business and every decision ends with you, you don't have a business, you have a job, and you have a chaotic, stressful, incredibly difficult job. And there's levels of entrepreneurship. There's the entrepreneur who has a side gig. It's just them. They're doing one thing. They have no employees. They're making some side money. Then there's the people you're talking about where you can make $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $500,000 a year running a small business where every decision ends with you, where you have a crew of 5 people, maybe you have 10 employees. You're a poor delegator. You're delegating tasks only. Like, there's 2 levels of delegation. There's delegating tasks, and then there's delegating decisions. And all you're doing is delegating tasks. When there's a problem, it ends with you as the business owner. You're the bottleneck in your business where everything stops with you. And you can do really, really well that way. You can be a poor entrepreneur, a poor delegator, a poor manager of people, and make great freaking money. There's a ton of people, we both know them, and that's not a bad way to do it. You can do that for 10 or 20 years. You can retire super early with millions of dollars in the bank account, totally change the trajectory of your family and the generations that follow. To cross that chasm, and the hardest part of all this, and the stuff that so many people are unable to do, is to really start to delegate decisions in your business, and so that people who work for you can solve the problems without you, and make the decisions without you, and interact with the customers, and interact in dynamic environments where there's not a clear-cut environment, or a clear-cut way to do things, but they can find the way forward without you, the owner, needing to 100%. Get involved. As a business owner, your instinct is always the same. Get out of my way. Let me solve this. I can do a better job. Nobody cares about my business like I do. I know this stuff better than anybody. Your employee brings you a problem. Get out of my way. I can solve it. That can only get you so far. It can get you far. You can make really good money doing that. But how you really cross the gap and be able to scale and understand leverage and like get your time freedom, how you get your time freedom back as an entrepreneur, is when you start delegating the decisions to other people. And when a problem comes, when you have a problem, when you have a task that needs done in your business, or a decision that needs made, instead of thinking, hey, how can I solve this decision? It's, who can I get to solve this decision? Instead of how can I do this, or how can I tackle this, or how can the business grow? It's, who can I get to do this? Who can I get to make that decision? Who can grow my business for me? And when you start to just be a gatherer of people, and you're a delegator, and you're empowering these people, that's when things can really explode, and entrepreneurship can get really fun, and you can get time freedom. A lot of things have to happen to get there. You got to be charging enough money to be able to pay these people really well. A decision maker, you're not going to find a decision maker for less than $75,000 a year. A really good decision maker at a higher level role, like you said, $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year. These people are assets to you, though. Like, a lot of business owners are like, wow, that's a huge expense. That's it. Like, first thing when I'm talking to business owners, or even me back in the day, like, Nick, you need to hire somebody for $200,000 a year. I'd be like, wow, that's a big expense. When in reality, that's an asset. That's an investment. That's not an expense. That's an investment. Agreed. So that I can go focus on growth and doing other things and growing the empire even more.
Yeah, I have this thesis that most entrepreneurs want to be their own boss. And so it prevents them from actually ever thinking about building their business as an asset that could be sold in the future. So one of your competitive advantages as a real estate guy is it's just an asset. It's a business, and I'm trying to increase the value, and I'm trying to literally be as hands-off as possible so that at some point in the future, I can sell that to another financial buyer, trade up, do a 1031 or something into the next deal. And most business owners are actually getting owned by their business. And so I know you've started to go down the business brokerage route, as am I. And you talk to these people who are ready to sell their business, and they're, 2-3 years out. because they are way too integrally involved. And I'll tell you a story about a friend of mine who built a business, doing $26 million a year top line. He's got 30 million in contracts over the next 3 years, and he gets an offer from a private equity group for 20 million bucks. He's 67 years old, but he's got to stick around for 5 to 7 years. Well, he's got to stick around for 5 to 7 years because he's still managing the key relationships. He's still making a lot of big decisions. He's still doing the bidding process, right? So he ended up taking a different deal that allowed him to retire in 6 months after he sold the business for $14 million. So it's the difference between him walking away with 20 or walking away with 14. 6 million bucks is a big difference, right? So we're talking about building an asset. But before we can even get there, right? And I think for our audience, like, it's that transition point. What's your 1, 2, 3 punch? Like, if I was going to go start a business today, what are the most important first 3 steps that I need to focus on? Because there's a lot of stuff coming at you. Oh, I got to have a website, got to have my business cards, got to have a blueprint, got to have an LLC. Mm-hmm. How do you think about it? I have a very specific 1, 2, 3 things that I'm trying to accomplish, but I'd love to know your take.
Yeah. So there's plenty of lists online, and I have a list too of, if you go to sweatystartup.com, of the 20 things that you need to start a business, from your LLC to your bank account to the software I like, to how my employees communicate, to all that stuff. But I think if we kind of zoom out and think of more tactical mindset, like, these are the bigger things that I need to do, it's picking a customer. Too many people, they start a company, they get all excited, and they're willing to take any work, and they're scraping by trying to sell those first couple customers. And if you get in a habit as a business owner of competing on price and competing with customers that are going to beat you up on price, A, those customers are tougher to actually service and they're not as good to work with. And B, you can't afford to pay good help and hire good talent if you're competing on price. I think as a business, you have 3 areas that you can potentially compete. You have price. You can compete on price. You can be the cheapest option. There's speed. You can get it done tomorrow, or you can get it done in a month because you're booked out. And then you have quality. Like, I'm gonna literally do a better job than the other options that you have. We are the best. You can't compete on all 3 of those. You cannot be the highest quality, the fastest, and the lowest price. That's not possible. You can be 2 of them. Okay, you can be 2 of them. I can be high quality and I can be cheap, but it's going to take you 3 months to get work done from me because I'm booked out and I got a customer list that's a mile long. Hey, you can be, not very high quality at all, low quality, but cheap and fast. But, obviously, which 2 I like to compete on. I like to be high quality and fast, and I like to charge people a premium. And find customers who are willing to pay a premium. There's a massive difference. I see this all the time. I post online, and I was recommending a software. I was recommending a software that costs $300 a month to run a small business. And half the tweets are like, holy cow, those features, like, for this, that's a bargain. And the other half were like, why would I ever spend $300 for a feature set to run my company? There's just people that play different games. There's people who play different games, guys. There's people that are out there scraping by to make $5,000 a month and pay their rent and feed their family. And there's people who are out there building businesses that generate $50,000, $100,000, $250,000 a month in cash flow. Do business with people who are making money. Like, step 1, do business with people who are making money, because people who are making money are willing to pay good money for really good shit fast.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I think too, we just overcomplicate it. Like, go get revenue, start building trust, start building brand, use that social proof to then take that to the next layer of echelon of customer that you want to go after. Trust is built on the back of 4 things: integrity, intent, capability, and results. I think that's why you've been so successful, is you continually show up every single day. They know that you're not a fly-by-night social influencer. You build in public. You're raw and real. You're willing to take it on the chin sometimes. I really appreciate that about you. It's just, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Somebody says, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. And you go, interesting, tell me more, right? And you've used that. And so people realize that, like, oh, this guy is actually leveraging this platform as a way to learn and grow. And then you parlay that into this build in public. So, like, we got at the beginning of this podcast, we got on and I said, man, I feel like I already know you so much. So it's just a tremendous relationship builder. And so I think most entrepreneurs need to spend more time on that part of their business of, like, hey, go out, do good work, leverage that reputation, tell that story, build in public. And this, like you said, it's a momentum play. Right?
I think there's one
three months to kind of.
There's one skill set that makes entrepreneurship feasible or not feasible. And it's sales. It's sales.
Yep.
If you're sitting there in your office right now, or you're commuting to a job you don't like, or you're thinking about getting into entrepreneurship and you want to make something happen, but you are afraid to have uncomfortable conversations with people, if you're afraid to pick up the phone and ask somebody for something, if you're afraid to sit down in an interview with a potential employee and sell them on your vision and your mission, and you can't, and you're not a good salesperson, then you are going to fail. Period.
100%.
Now, I'm not talking about the people who just say they're bad at sales because they're afraid of it. I'm talking about the people who are just are afraid of those uncomfortable conversations. You talk about pain to profit. All you're doing as an entrepreneur all day long is having painful conversations with people to profit afterwards. And if you're selling something, you're selling all day as an entrepreneur. I don't care who you are. Obviously you're selling your customers. You need their money. You're also selling your employees to come and make a huge life change, to come and work for you. That is a massive job, to sell them. You're selling your vendors and your contractors to sell to you. You're selling them on you being a good customer to work with. You're selling all day, nonstop. Even your employees, when it comes to telling them what to do and managing them, you can't make people do anything. They do things because they want to do them. Your job as a boss is to make them want to do the right things by selling them on the fact that they're the right things. So all day, nonstop, you're in sales mode. If you don't like sales as an entrepreneur, you're toast. You're toast.
Yeah, I see that trap a lot with, I'd say like artisan and like engineer type people. Really good at like product design, really good at doing the work, but they have railroad track thinking. I got one job, I booked one deal. Okay, pick my head up. Oh crap, there's no more coming down the pipeline. So my recommendation has always been, if you have a good idea and you're more an engineer type, you need to know that about yourself. And you need to go find somebody who is that salesperson to partner up with, and then respect their work, right? Engineers also have a tendency to be like, well, you don't really know anything about the product. It's like, well, the product doesn't exist if we don't have revenue. So you know, you kind of referenced it, but there's a good book, Who Not How. I think that's key in finding a good partnership. There's a whole graveyard of great ideas that failed to launch because there was no marketing and there was no sales.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. The best piece of advice one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever heard is that you could be anywhere in the world, and if you got a bag full of gold bars, they are completely worthless unless you know how to sell them.
100%.
That's it.
What would you say has been the hardest part of your journey? You know, I think like people, again, they look at you, you've been in the game for a long time, since you were 14. Mm-hmm. But are there any distinct moments, like the painful, hard parts that really forged you as an entrepreneur?
I think as an entrepreneur, people underestimate the amount of times that your ego gets crushed and you have to change your mind on something. I'm naturally stubborn. I naturally think that I'm right. I naturally have confidence and just strengthen my ability. I have a positive mindset on how I think about things. And the amount of times that I've been humbled by being wrong is, it's developed what is now one of my superpowers, and that I'm incredibly open-minded and I'm willing to change my mind on a dime. I am willing to change my mind because I'm searching for the correct answer and the truth and the good information, not just stuff that supports my point of view. So many entrepreneurs, and me when I was just starting out, it was high speed, it was full speed, and I was looking for stuff that supported my point of view, information. And I was ignoring the shit I was ignoring the people and the information that disagreed with me. And it led to some painful stuff and some bad decisions. And I had to grow. I had to grow as an individual who then understood, hey, an entrepreneur who's doing a lot and has a lot going on, they're going to make 300 key decisions in a year in their business. 200 or 300 key decisions, one a day. Everybody's going to get 100 of them wrong. Everybody, even the best entrepreneurs are going to get 100 of them wrong. You got to be able to learn from those and get the 10 important make or break decisions. You got to get those right. But another thing about entrepreneurship is that's just so hard about all this is that there's no guidebook. There's no right way. There's no two ways that are alike. I can study your journey, Samson. I can study books on Elon Musk and Steve Jobs, and I can try to mimic their thought process and the decisions that they would have made. And I can get good advice from people. I can go get coffee from people who are rich, and they're going to tell me things that are not applicable to my life. It's not going to work for me. What works for them is not going to work for me. So every decision you make every single day is a Y in the road. You come up to a Y and you got to choose whether you're going to go left or right. And so many times, both are right. Both will work. Both can get you there. There's a million ways to win. There's a million ways to do this. So that's why decision making and business is so hard. And you got to change your mind pretty often.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, because sometimes you're actually making a sacrifice because of maybe how it impacts your family, the stress it might put them under, the amount of travel it might require of you, something to that extent. So I think it's also incredibly important to just be real of like your lifestyle design. You know, some people are perfectly okay working 100 hours a week and neglecting their family. I know for me, that's not the case. So I tend to agree with you. Or how do I work 300 hours a week? How do I work 400 hours a week? It's leveraging other people's time, right? And so time is just is money. It's a currency. And so I think that there's a trap for most entrepreneurs is they'll go get advice from somebody who doesn't actually align with their core values. It doesn't align with their lifestyle design. And so you're getting advice from somebody who, you know, has been divorced 4 times and works 150 hours a week or whatever, something crazy like that. And it's erroneous to your decision-making process. It's a trap. Was there ever a point where go ahead.
I did the math. I'm working about 3,000 hours this week. I'm working 3,000 hours this week. I'm working about 30 and my money is working 2,970.
Let's go. Exactly right.
You're giving people money in exchange for labor.
Was there ever a point where you felt like quitting? Or just like a super low point?
I mean, this is hard all the freaking time. It's people look at my Twitter, they follow me, and they think, wow, this guy's just living the freaking dream. Like he's starting these companies, he's got all this cash flow, he's got all this fun stuff going on. It doesn't get easier. It's like an Olympic track athlete. I don't know if it was Prefontaine or somebody said, you know, running the mile doesn't get easier as you get better. You just get faster.
Yep.
That's it. Like you're still going to
new levels, new devils, right? There's new problems as you reach a new echelon.
And the pressure gets higher, frankly. My ability to handle stress, I consider that a muscle too. Like I've trained that a lot. My stress tolerance. There are people who live not very stressful lives at all. They don't even know what real stress is. And if they have a flat tire on the way home from work, it'll ruin their week. Them being on the side of the road, they'll have a panic attack. They're in serious mental anguish because their tire got flat on I-65.
Yep.
I could have a flat tire on the way home from work, and I could forget to tell my wife about it at the dinner table because it is a non-issue. Because you get like the problems get bigger. You think Elon Musk gets stressed about one of his employees quitting when he was, 24 hours from bankruptcy, in the early days of SpaceX. I mean, the level of the decision making just goes up and the pressure gets higher. I have now 300 plus families that are indirectly related to my businesses that are getting supported by me guiding these and making these correct decisions as a business owner. And that gets stressful. And the most stressful part of being an entrepreneur is you just have people's lives on the line. It's not just you anymore. In the early days, 100%. And some people are selfish enough or they're just, in the zone enough where they can operate and not really care about the human toll of what they're doing. But if I'm going to sit down and sell somebody on coming to join my company and join my mission and I'm telling them how it's going to work and what I'm going to do, and I can't deliver and my company starts to fail and I got to let that person go, that's my fault. Like that's stressful. That person literally stopped what they were doing, went to work for my company and making that their career move. Like they're spending valuable, like everybody only works for 40 years. They're spending 1, 2, 3, 5 years with me to come in and earn a living and build wealth and accomplish all their goals and feed their family and put their kids in school. And if I can't deliver that, those are some of the toughest conversations that I have, whether the people can't hack it or I make a poor decision that the business is just not doing well enough to be able to support them.
When you jumped all into entrepreneurship, did you have a family? Did you know your wife at that time?
No, I've never had a W-2 ever.
Yeah,
not one.
But when
I started the business when I was 21, and I met my wife that year but we didn't get married until 2016 when I was 26.
Yeah. So would you have done it differently? It's hard to say, right? Because you've just never experienced it. But if you had a family, would that change the way that you
I think
approach
it
it?
would
And
have made it harder. Yeah, it would have made
the
it
reason
harder.
I ask is just our audience is, kind of wrestles with that, myself included, at one point in time.
Yeah, it's way easier to take risk when you don't have a mortgage and kids and bills and a wife that's depending on you. Yeah, but I mean, look, we live in America, and most people in America have, if they've, if they have the means to be listening to this show, if they're interested in making money, let's be honest, most of them have a stable life around them. Not everybody's blessed to have a stable life around them, but I like to sometimes I'll do this with my wife, and when we're making a tough decision, or when we're at a crossroads where we're trying to figure out where we're going to move, or if I was going to build that first building and sign on that $1.9 million loan to give a personal guarantee, we're making these big decisions, and we would just think, like, what's the worst thing that could happen here? Let's write it down. Like, what is the worst thing that could come of all this? And it almost always ended up with us moving in with our parents for a few years, getting a new job, making a lot of money because of the experience that you have, and continuing on.
Yep.
So, like, you kind of tend to overemphasize the downside. And yes, 150 years ago, or even less in many countries, if you fucked up and didn't have any money, your family could starve. Your family could literally starve to death. We don't live in that world anymore. We have backstops in place in our society that are really a blessing. It'd be nice if we had a couple more, obviously. You could not worry about having a health crisis that you can't pay for. But, for the most part, we're very lucky to be in the United States, and the downside risk of trying something is a lot lower than most people think.
I love that. Yeah, perspective. So good. You're constantly having to reshape your paradigm as you kind of go through these hard points. And that's kind of that muscle, right? Of like, how do you handle stress? You can quickly reframe it, and the context could be way worse than a flat tire, for example. You
may tell you
bad news
the
about
sad part of
health
this, though. The sad part of this is that most people are not good delegators. Most people are not good decision makers. I mean, if the average American could make good decisions, the average American wouldn't be broke and have less than $500 in their checking account and overweight. Like, let's be real. Average, this is average. The 50th percentile American is broke, they're overweight, and they have, they don't own anything. They have negative net worth, and they've never managed anybody. They don't know how to delegate. They don't know how to sell. So just encouraging anybody off the street to go in and start a business is not, I don't feel comfortable doing that anymore. I used to do that early in my career, that everybody should be an entrepreneur. Everybody should be an entrepreneur. Everybody should be an entrepreneur. Then I kept hiring people and getting to know more and more people, and realizing that, holy cow, most people are really freaking bad at making decisions. Most people are not good. Most people are not freaking good at telling other people what to do. Most people are not very organized. Most people just simply don't have it. And like I tweet and talk all the time about how entrepreneurship is an amazing thing. You should go start a business, change the world, do what you want to do, make a bigger life. Some of the happiest people I know work a 40-hour job. They clock in on Monday morning, and their goal all week is to do as little as possible and still get paid next Friday and not get fired. That's their goal. And they get home at 5:00 and they do whatever they want in their free time. And they have a lot of other things that they're really passionate about. They have families, they have deep relationships, they have a ton of joy in their life. And they're some of the happiest people I know. And some of the entrepreneurs that I know, so many of them are tied to they don't own businesses, they own jobs. They have a ton of stress. They have no flexibility. They don't see their kids. And they're fucking grumpy all the time.
Yeah, it's not wrong. It's not wrong. One of the things I've heard you say is how pivotal Twitter was in your business. Now you have like over 300,000 subs on Twitter. I think I looked, you have 45,000 on LinkedIn, 24,000 on YouTube. Killer podcast, Sweaty Startup. Got 1.9 million square feet of storage. I think you're doing, last time I heard, close to 50 million top line across all your companies. Is that still accurate?
Yeah, but I have investors. That's the majority. That's the storage business. I'm my personal cash flow is about 200 to 250,000 a month.
Yep. But that wasn't the case 5 years ago.
No.
So I want to talk more about that. Like, what was the catalyst to say I'm going to go all in on Twitter, and and why that platform?
Turns out you need three things to really make a lot of money, and you need a network, you need distribution, and you need capital. And Twitter and social media brought me all three of those things at the same time in a major way. It's like you can have a bag of gold bars anywhere in the world, but if you don't know how to sell them, they're worthless. You don't have anybody willing to buy them, they're worthless. And all of a sudden I got distribution. I got a ton of customers, and I run a real estate private equity company, so my customers are my investors. Like, that's my number one customer. The number one customer I serve in my real estate business is my investor. Number two is my tenant. And I got just access to capital and a network of people that are willing to join my team and come work for me. And those three things are what changed everything for me and accelerated my career 40 years in 3 years.
Why not pick like LinkedIn over Twitter or something like that?
I could have picked LinkedIn over Twitter. I just happened to get lucky and got encouraged to come on Twitter. And a friend of mine had, I think, 2,500 followers when he told me to get on Twitter, and he started interacting with my stuff, and I got my first 500 followers pretty quick. And then from there, it's a lot easier. The first 500 followers are the hardest. You're tweeting into the oblivion. But I mean, look, everybody asks me, hey, Nick, I want to get a Twitter following. How do I get a Twitter following? How do I do it? And my answer is another one that nobody wants to hear. It's another unsexy thing. And that, hey, you got to do something worthwhile in life. If you're not doing interesting stuff, nobody wants to follow you. Nobody. If you're going to regurgitate stories of other people, if you're going to write, well and be a kind of a journalist on Twitter, you can gain a following, but it's not going to be a valuable following. There's a few people who have been able to do it. They're just such good writers, such hard workers that they actually can work themselves into hundreds of thousands of followers and a very valuable following. Most of the time, that's just absolutely not the case. The way to do it, I mean, you look at the list. Look at the top 300 people who are followed on Twitter. They're all famous people, top 1% athletes in the world, and entrepreneurs who are making a lot of money. So, like, step one is to do something interesting. And I had started the business. We had built that building. We had created a lot of value, and I was talking very openly about it. And you can't be afraid to brag on yourself. I mean, I like to think that in person I'm a humble guy. Many people would disagree. But I tell people how good I am on Twitter. It's uncomfortable, but if you're not willing to do that, if you're not willing to say, hey, here is how much storage I have, and here's how we did it. Hey, here's how much revenue my business has. Here's how we did it. Hey, here's why you should follow me and why I'm worth following. You have to scream it at the top of your lungs over and over and over again. And it's uncomfortable, but that's how you got to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between confident and cocky, right? And so if you're not confident and you hang around confident people, you feel uncomfortable. But the fact that you said it's uncomfortable to brag on yourself is a sign of humility. Like, it does feel at first a little slimy, right? Until you kind of figure out your knack or how you communicate it in a way that you're not really bragging as much as you're saying, here's how I did it, and you can do it too. And that's what I appreciate most about your content. Why do you think every real entrepreneur, not entrepreneurs, but people who are serious about doing what we're doing, why do you think they should be creating content, and why is it important in the long run?
If you are already achieving all of your goals, if you already have the reach that you want financially and economically and business-wise, there is no reason to get on social media. There's a lot of negative too. There's the addiction that comes, the dopamine hits, the super mean people, the crabs in a bucket mentality of social media, all the jealous people who don't want to see people win, that are just so mean. I mean, look at any notable account, from LeBron James to Joe Biden to Grant Cardone to me, to little old me. Look at any of our tweets, and 75% of the responses are, hey, fuck you, you should die. That's what the responses say. Because there's so many people that are sitting in their parents' basement. And look, life is fucking hard. It really is. Life is hard. So when you see people winning at life, it makes you feel worse about yourself. Period. So I get it. I understand why it happens. I understand the psychology behind it. But so if you already have those three things, network, capital, and distribution, if you already have those three things, no reason at all to get on Twitter. But if you have bigger goals, if you want more customers, if you'd like access to more investment or partners, or you'd like to attract talent to come into your organization and work with you, there's no better place than social media to grow, to do that stuff.
So do you think, though, that in the kind of the next era, right? I mean, 1983, the internet came on board. It's the same time when the baby boomers were stepping up to the helm as the kind of the leaders of entrepreneurs. And those days are gone. And so my thesis on it, like that strategy once upon a time worked really, really well. But in kind of the next era of business, when you talk about who your future customer is going to be and how they think about trust, I'll use the insurance industry because I got some experience. One of the companies we own is in that space, coaching and training for insurance professionals. There's all these guys who like been in the business for 40 years. They know more about benefits than any other person on the planet. And then all of a sudden you see this young guy come along. He's, 24 years old, just getting out of college, got his finance degree, who understands the platforms. And he just starts smoking these old dogs and they can't figure it out. But their response to it is, he got lucky, right? So my take on it is in the next gen, the next era, that you're not going to be able to hide from it in some way, shape, or form as an entrepreneur, as a CEO of a real company. You're going to have some sort of presence. You're going to have some sort of authority. And you see it. Like when I talk to people who are struggling to hire, I go, tell me more about your recruiting strategy. They're like, oh, we have a page on our website. I'm like, but do you think about recruiting talent like they're a lead, right? What's the story? Why would they want to come work for you and trade their most important asset, which is time, to come work at your organization? What's it like to work there? Show me under the hood. Who are you, right? I mean, there's a ton of mistrust with the corporate world right now. So I think as entrepreneurs who are trying to build bigger things, we got to do a good job of just showcasing who we are authentically. You won't be able to escape it. That's my take.
The whole thing is this whole world is about leverage. This whole world is about leverage. And look, I can go to rooms full of people and talk. Maybe I'll get a speaking engagement at a conference with 300 business people, and they'll listen to the way I think about something for a few minutes before they, start, their mind starts wandering and you pick up their phone and start thinking about something else. Or I can get on Twitter and I can spend 3 minutes thinking about a thought, and I can hit the send button, and in the next 24 hours, it'll reach 2 or 3 or 5 college football stadiums full of people. It'll go right into their mind. My thought goes right into their mind. That's mind blowing. That's mind blowing. If you think about what that can mean for you as a business owner, as somebody who's going to offer professional services, as somebody who's going to raise capital, as somebody who, look, what's your goal as an entrepreneur? And I think your goal is the same as mine. It's influence as many people in a positive way as possible. Period. Like that's the goal. When I die, I'm trying to get that number as high as possible. I want to build millionaires inside of my company. I want to influence more customers. I want to change the way people think. I want to leave my mark on the world. There's no better way to do that than getting distribution and capital. So
yeah, exactly.
It aligns perfectly with my goals.
How do you stay consistent creating that much content? I mean, you pump out a ton of content. Are you pre-thinking? Is it all off the cuff? Like, do you pre-write it? Do you use some platforms, tools to support you in that?
So I have a team. I'd say up until about 6 months ago, it was just me. It was just me tweeting whenever I felt like tweeting, and I would just write. And I'm a prolific content creator. I was born with it. Some people who are brilliant writers, they write amazing copy. They've had a ton of practice writing. It's painful for them to generate content. They can't do it. They just don't like it. It doesn't come to them naturally. They got to really work at it. I'm the kind of guy who, I don't care what people think, so I'll send out half-baked stuff without needing to be perfect. That's a huge part of it. I don't care if people get upset at me or disagree with me or I change my mind on something. That's a win. So I have a half-baked opinion that I don't even strongly hold that opinion. Like I have very strong opinions that are loosely held, and I will tweet them so that I get smarter, and I will send them out in the world because I don't care what people think about me. That's another one of my superpowers. But look, I can create a ton of content quick, and it just comes and comes and comes and comes and comes. I can't sleep very well because I can't turn it off.
Yeah. And that's what I can tell. I can tell you're you do your own stunts. That's what I get from it. What's your daily routine? How do you take care of the most important stuff? We're talking a lot about business, but you're a family guy. You have a young daughter, is that right?
I have a
And so,
5-year-old boy, 3-year-old boy, and a 1-year-old girl. Yep.
okay, you got multiple kids. Gosh, I just saw the picture
Hmm.
of your wife
Baby
and your
Julia.
youngest this
Yep.
one. Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. But how do you take care of that? I mean, that's the most important stuff. Like, your faith, your family, your physical health, and relationships with your friends. How do you keep that in check?
I'm a I'm one of the entrepreneurs who has a lot of other hobbies. I'm a curious person. Somebody could say, "Hey Nick, we're getting on a plane and we're going to Alaska and we're spending 3 weeks up there and we're just going to try to survive." And I I'm crazy. I think that like adventuring is fun for me. Like struggling with something, whether it be golf, weight training, cycling, fishing, all these hobbies are nothing but work. Like, let's be real, they're nothing but mental challenges and things you got to work towards to get good at. And I love pushing myself and challenging myself, and hobbies are a big part of it. So I'm not a one-dimensional entrepreneur, but I look at life that uh, uh, what do you call something? You say something that means something else, like a. I
Heuristic
look at life.
acronym.
Yeah, I look at life as like there's 7 or 8 gardens that I have to water. My physical body. I have to keep my physical body in good shape with the way I eat and the way I move. My relationship with my wife is another one. My faith, my businesses, my relationships with my friends, my kids, and my hobbies. Those are my gardens that I need to water. And my life is all built around like build really strong foundations so that you can have fun and you can live life and you can screw around a little bit and still have a very healthy, well balanced life. If you have a really strong foundation with physical fitness and you've been in shape your whole life, you've never let yourself go for periods of time and then tried to bring it back and let yourself go and bring it back. If you have a strong foundation, you can go a month without working out and you're okay. Your body's going to be just fine. If you have a really strong relationship with your wife and you trust each other and you communicate really well and you have time with each other to really build trust, you can go to a conference for a week without talking to her and grind in your business for a week or a month or whatever it takes, and the relationship won't fall apart. You won't go at each other's throats. If you have a really strong relationship with your friends, same thing. You know, every area of life, if you have a strong foundation, you can have balance and you can neglect certain things for short periods of time and get away with it. What happens when things go wrong is you neglect those things for too long. If you neglect those
Right.
things for too long, it all falls apart. But I like to think that I can live a balanced life. I don't care if I'm in the red on my whoop score, 2 nights a week. I don't have to have a perfect routine to where I can't do anything fun and even go out to eat with friends. I want to be a person that can have fun, build businesses, have good relationships, have a good marriage, have good relationship with my kids. I'm the kind of guy that wants it all. So I don't have a super uh, structured routine. I take care of business and have fun.
Yeah, and you just have a natural measurement stick in your head of those
Mm-hmm.
things and how they're being watered. And you're also probably looking at your own cup. Like, my cup's a little empty, man. I need to go do some adventure and kind of break away from the business. And you come back and you're recharged and you got more clarity. And so that's a skill too. That's something you just get better with at time. But thank you for sharing those pillars. I think that's something that people are just kind of unaware of. They're just kind of letting life happen to them, and they're not being intentional, and they don't really have a way to look at those gardens and say, "Oh man, this one's being a little bit neglected." So, what's keeping you awake at night right now? You've been on the journey. I would call you a Yoda, right? You're a Yoda to somebody else who's listening to this right now. And it's always interesting to unpack like what you're thinking about, what you're looking around the corner on economically,
Mm-hmm.
financially, strategizing, both positive and
Yeah.
negative.
So
Like, what's keeping you
uh,
awake at night?
one very real thing is that the real estate market is in chaos right now. Interest rates have went from 3% to 7% in the course of a year, and I own a lot of real estate, and I'm the steward of a lot of people's capital. So
Right.
I spend a lot of time thinking and making sure that we're protecting risk in the right way over there. Um, I think we're going to be fine, and it's going to be just another season, but there's going to be a lot of pain in the real estate market. That definitely keeps me awake a little bit. Also, I have 5 other companies that I've started in the past 6 months, and starting in business from the ground up. It's service business and agency. That's not easy stuff. I mean, you could be the best operator in the world, and month 3 to month 12 when you start a business is brutal. No matter how many times you've done it, no matter how good you are, no matter how good your team is, you're not having fun in the startup from 3 to 12. Month 1 to 3, it's fun because things are happening, it's moving, you're making a lot of progress, you're learning a lot, you're getting those first couple customers, you're making those first hires. It's exciting. The measuring stick, like you can see, oh my God, our website's here. Oh my gosh, our first customer's here. Oh my gosh, our bank account has a little bit of money in it. All those things are exciting. When the 3-month mark hits, you start to get a little tired. You're working long hours. You got to make some hires. A couple of those hires aren't working out. You got to let them go. You got to hire again. A couple of customers are being a pain in the ass. The deliverable processes aren't right. You got to build the systems. And so we're in the thick of it with about 4 businesses, and actually more, like 6 businesses. And I got a good team though. It's fun.
Love that. Well, we'll land the plane. What do you think the difference is between entrepreneurs who are successful and those who give up, quit, or never get started?
I think a big chunk of entrepreneurs just don't have it. I the more I try to teach entrepreneurship, the more I try to talk about this stuff, the more fatalistic I'm getting about some people just not having the ability to do this stuff. It's hard. And most people are better off getting a job. And then the other part of it is that delegating and getting other people to make decisions for you, and getting a who am I going to get to do this attitude instead of a how am I going to do this attitude is really hard too. It's uncomfortable. You feel like you're letting go of control. And the first steps of that are really, really hard, and you can't build a business without it. When you build a business and you're starting a business and you have your own customers, you have your own employees, you have full ownership over it, your name's on it maybe, your whole identity as a man is tied up in this business, and you start delegating serious parts of it to other people that aren't as good at it as you, and you got to accept a little loss, and you got to accept some overhead, and you got to deal with problems that arise in those areas. That is such a hard step that so many people are not willing to make. They can make it. They're just not willing to make the investment in the salary of the decision makers. They're not willing to delegate those decisions. They're not willing to pass the reins to their employees and trust their employees to get stuff done. But once you know how to do that, then it's onward and upward.
Love that. All right, man. Well, that's a wrap. How does our audience keep up with your story? Take advantage of all the free content you're putting out. You got some great courses. How do they get involved? What if they want to be an investor? What's the best way to make that?
So if you're an accredited investor, you can go to invest.boltstorage.com, or you can go to nickhuber.com if you're more interested in investing in small business. So the real estate thing is Bolt Storage. If you want to invest in some small businesses, which we're kind of building a family office style private equity firm, you can go to nickhuber.com. But just getting a look into how I think about business and entrepreneurship and management and delegation and hiring, which can happen if you're an employee, can happen if you're an entrepreneur. The best thing that you can do is go sign up for my newsletter. I spend about 2 or 3 hours a week writing. It's between 1,000 and 4,000 words each week, and it's on real estate, small business, hiring, management, delegation. And you can sign up for that at sweatystartup.com. I send a weekly email, and then follow me on Twitter at sweatystartup.
Love it. We'll put it all in the show notes, man. If you want to be an entrepreneur, you better be prepared to delegate, to elevate, be incredibly uncomfortable, and you need access to capital, network, and attention. And I think there's no better guy to go follow than Nick Huber at Sweaty Startup. And I appreciate you being here, man. I can't wait to do the next one.
Samson, this was a great interview. You're very good at this, and I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you, bro. Thanks.